Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about what it means to be a good communist. And I want to do so on the basis of these 8 points that I have crafted. 8 points to be a good communist. So if you want at any moment in the video, ACP your mom. Thank you so much, Northern Marx. You are brilliant. At any moment in the video, you can pause it, screenshot it, whatever you want to do. ACP New York, shout out to you, the good pro, consistent Institute viewer. I think it's important to do this for a few reasons. We have to realize that a member of a communist party isn't just a regular individual. As soon as you commit yourself to being a member of the Communist Party, you're not just a regular individual that identifies as communist. You have to be, as a member of a communist party, and I've said this before, almost like a portal into the future. When people interact with you, it has to feel like, like you came from space or you came from somewhere else. Not because you're so foreign to what they're used to, in a literal immediate sense, but because you are able to embody some of the best some of the best characteristics they have engaged with in their life at a level that is superior to what they usually engage with it as. You have to try to be a better human being when you commit yourself to being a communist, which means that that's something that's somewhat more difficult in a country like ours that has promoted such a rugged individualism, that has degenerated at the level of culture to such a superficial level, where any thought pattern that is not rooted in immediate pleasure seeking is completely off the table. And this is the human material we're dealing with. We can't condemn it when we see it. But within the party, we should try to help individuals develop out of that, develop into something, and to being the sorts of people that are more truly human, as Che would say. That's what a communist should try to be. So again, this is not an eight-point list for what it is that people must have in order to be let in. We understand the human material that we're dealing with. We can't pop into existence a pure working class. If there's someone who's clearly against any purity fetishes test for admission, it's myself, it's the Institute. That's our whole framework of analysis for criticizing the old, defunct, and feudal left. But once you're within a party setting, shout out to ACP Oklahoma checking in. Once you're within a party setting, you have a new level of responsibility that you didn't have before. Before it was okay if you were kind of a mess, a product of your circumstances. Now, as a member of the Communist Party, you're engaged in the sort of collective that affords you the new environment, the new circumstances for you to be a better individual. And that's a duty that you have. That's a responsibility that you have. And it's not going to take a month. It's not going to take 6 months. It's going to take a whole lot of time. It's going to be itself a process. But it's something that we must think critically. And I'm not saying I'm perfect in that area, far from it. But it's something that we should think critically about and have always in mind and strive towards. How do we strive towards being a better individual? That's something that, at the level of the people in the party, it's not just the community we're serving. It's also, as individuals, we need to be able to have almost like a revolution in ourself. It's kind of like it's like a communist baptism of sorts. We need to be reborn, and that rebirth is not going to be one moment. It's going to be a series of continuous moments rooted in the creation of new habits. that upon their accumulation, at some moment, you're just going to snap and be like, wow, I am completely different from the sort of person I was 6 months ago, a year ago, however long ago. But it's an important and essential process. It's one that all successful communist parties from around the world now and historically have uh, have been able to affect, have been able to actualize. A transformation of the individuals. And if you're watching this and you're not a member of the party for any reason, but you know someone who is, those people that are in the party, they should be the sort of people that when you check back in on them 6 months from now, you're like, holy crap, this is a new individual. And when this happens, it's not just affecting you alone. As individuals, we are the sort of embedded web of relations that we exist in. When we transform because of our activity in the party into better human beings, into actual communists, better communists, we're going to transform those around us. That is a transformation that's not going to go unnoticed. I know some of you are younger. If the party makes you a better human being because you're following these sorts of these eight principles of sorts, don't make it dogmatic, obviously, but these 8 tips for being a better communist. And in 3 months, it's showing itself, and your mom turns to you and you're like, she tells you, Juancito, like, I don't know what you've been doing, but you've made a 180 transformation. Now you're reading, you're helping me around the house, you're doing all these great things, you're treating me better, you're not fighting with me. Those are the sorts of interactions that should be produced if you are committed to being a good communist. It should affect the people around you. And it already has. There's a kid I met in Chicago. If I recall correctly, his name is Ian. Someone who had issues with his father for very long. He didn't get along with his father. And after interacting with Haas's work and the infrared community, after engaging in this sort of work, pretty soon he was able to restore his relationship with his father, to become a better human being. I was able to meet his parents. Great people. These are the sorts of transformations that the Communist Party should allow you to undergo. That doesn't mean that the Communist Party is a sort of monastery that we all come into in order to get purified. It's the opposite of that. But at the subjective level, being a communist should mean undergoing that transformation where you embody in your very being the sort of new society that we're fighting towards. So I jotted down, 8 points connected to this. The first one is study diligently. Read not just the classics of your tradition, but the wealth of knowledge accumulated from mankind. Who knows where that expression, the wealth of knowledge, comes from? This is a test. Let's see in the chat if you can tell me where that expression comes from. The wealth of knowledge. Who used that expression? Any guesses? Guess. Lenin. You got it correct, Michael. In the speech to the youth leagues, he tells the youth leagues, you're not a communist just when you remember communist slogans or when you only read communist texts. At the level of knowledge and thinking and studying, you become a communist when you sort of drink from the fountain of knowledge, the wealth of knowledge that has been produced by mankind. So it means, if you're going to be a communist, you have to study diligently. You have to be a cultured individual, not just, read. Of course, your basic reading should always be the classics: Marx, Engels, Lenin, Stalin, Mao, Du Bois, the stuff from the Institute, whatever, which is not classic, but read from your tradition, but also expand beyond that. Read the classics of literature from all eras. Read the classics of philosophy. Read know your Plato, know your Aristotle, know your Saint Augustine, know your Saint Thomas, know your bourgeois political philosophy, your Locke, your Hume, your Rousseau, your Robespierre. Know about the French Revolution. Know about the Spartacus uprisings. Know about the Roman Empire. Know about the Mongol civilizations. Know about Greek society. Know about the Peloponnesian War. Know about the American Revolution. These are, like, I'm not telling you like it's a precondition for you to know all of this, but foundationally, what you need is to learn how to love learning. That's Lenin's dictum. I've said this joke many times. Eddie has said it many times as well. They asked Marx, Engels, and Lenin who they rather be with, the wife or the mistress. Marx, as a good conservative, goes with the wife. Engels, as a good liberal in these issues, goes with the mistress. And Lenin, surprisingly, says both. And everyone turns in shock. I thought, Lenin is kind of like Marx, a little bit more conservative. How is it going to be both? And then Lenin says, well, I'll tell my wife I'm with the mistress. I'll tell the mistress I'm with the wife. But in reality, I'll go to the library and just study. That's the spirit that should animate the communist, someone who is in love with learning. The communist is a philosopher. Not a philosopher in the sense of the people you engage with in the academy. But if the philosopher is the person that's rooted in this love of wisdom, this sort of eternal, ever-burning love of the inquiry into knowing various things, history, our current world, philosophy, etc., that's a spirit that should animate the communists too. And that's what Lenin thought. And I think it should animate us too, especially in a society where this deeply human urge to know the world is completely thwarted by the forces of capital that have, from the moment we got into schooling and thought about what learning even is, reduced that love of knowledge to simple, formulaic, mechanical memorization. And that's a big crime against, it's a crime against humanity, really. It strips us of that creative urge to know the world. The second point, be amongst the people, understand the people, root your knowledge of number one in their everyday lives, their Lebenswelt. Educate the people based on the acknowledgement of the common sense they already hold, what Gramsci called their spontaneous philosophy, and how the rational kernels in these can be made explicit through the Marxist worldview. That just gets into what we spoke about a little earlier. In order for you to serve and educate the people and uplift them, you need to understand them first. You need to understand where the people are at, where they're coming from. And there's no copy pasting that can be done. We can't just read about what Lenin said of the people in his context and assume it's true here. That's something we have to experience directly. We can't just copy the context of, for instance, New York and apply it to Iowa. That's something we have to experience directly. We have to be rooted in the people, understand what their common sense mentality, where it's at, and how on that basis you're going to find these little kernels of truth that can be developed into communist insight, and do that. But the first task is not to come down and talk down to the people, tell them this is what you need to know, but understand what it is that they know and how, developing upon the more rational components of what they already know, you can walk them to communism. That's an essential component of the war of positions, of the war of ideas, and how it is that communists reach the people, or at least new people, to convince them to win them over to the communist struggle. For the vast majority of people, you're going to in part win them over, not by convincing them ideologically, but by showing, in terms of results, that you guys are the ones that actually serve the people. That's why it's important to do all of these community service. That's going to be made in a later point. Point number 3, serve the people. Be an outstanding member of your workplace and community. Be the person people turn to when something is wrong. Be someone people can count on. Take responsibility for yourself, your coworkers, and your community. This gets at what I was just talking about. You need to be someone that's reliable, someone that your people, your community, your workers, your coworkers can trust. Um, if you're someone who cannot be held responsible for the things that they are responsible for, um, if you're someone that operates in a way that you're not making yourself accountable to the tasks that you put yourself up to, you can't be a communist. You know, a whole lot of the largest component of winning over the people to our side is not convincing them ideologically, even though that plays an important and significant role. The most important part is getting people to trust you. The vast majority of people in China are not communists, but they're sympathetic and loving of the Communist Party. Why? Because it works. It works for them. It has shown the results. And on the basis of those results, there's been a relationship of trust that has been developed. This is what you all, members of the ACP, have to do. Be the sort of individuals that are there in times of crisis to help your communities and to build those bonds of trust out of which the sympathetic mass is created for our struggle for socialism. That's an essential component, as important, if not perhaps even more important, than the ideological question. Number 4, this one might seem controversial. Be normal. Communism has historically been demonized in America. It's been given an alien and foreign gloss. Break through that by showing that we're just regular people looking to serve our class and communities. Don't go walking around with a Stalin shirt quoting Mao every 5 seconds. If you can, try to find American figures that have championed the same insights as Marxists from other countries and cite those in conjunction with the foreign Marxists. This is going to be a little controversial, but try to not be weird. We're already on an uphill battle of generations of the American people being fed that the idea that communists are just these weirdos that are foreign and have nothing to do with America. Don't reinforce that by it. Yeah, it should be a given, but that's why they have to say and on pill bottles, insert through the mouth, because there's people that insert pills through other areas too. It should be a given, but you still have to qualify it. This should be a given too. Don't be weird. And that doesn't mean that, you know, it's kind of common sense. Like just try to be a normal person. You can't stop me from being emo. That's not what I'm referring to. You know, be who you are, but blend in with the sort of community that you're a part of. If you're in a community where a bunch of people are kind of just these emo and punk rock or hard rock listening to communities, like don't show up with Beethoven. You know, that's not gonna work. It's not gonna work well. Like be rooted in whatever is considered normal in the community that you're in. Don't make it seem you're already having to beat the sort of allegations of communists being these foreign evil people that are here to destroy the way of life of Americans. Don't feed into that. Like just be a normal person. A person that like blends into the regular environment that you're in, but that embodies the best of it. That embodies the best of it. I'm not asking you to be just mediocre. That's not what I mean by being normal. I mean like don't be the sort of person. It should be common sense, but sometimes it's not. Don't be the sort of person that just on the basis of who it is that you are, you're going to alienate other people. That's the gist of it. The content of what normal means obviously is reflective of various different circumstances that you put yourself in. But be a normal human being. All right, we have enough allegations we have to beat for on top of that to add more on it. And this is another part of like why national nihilism is just completely ridiculous. Like 99% of Americans are not going around like whipping themselves in the back for how evil American history is. This is just the basic premises of their existence, of their everyday lives, of their cultural life. By rejecting that, we're kind of being weird. We're not being normal Americans. And that doesn't mean that we go hoorah the flag war and become super patriots. On the contrary, we have to have that position to be faithful to that American creed. We have to be socialists. We have to reject super patriotism. We have to have revolutionary defeatism. It's in many ways very common sense, but common sense doesn't seem to be that common. Doesn't seem to be that common as of late. Number 5, this might be another controversial one. Be honorable. Live up to what is expected from you. Try not to let people down. Do not talk behind people's backs things you wouldn't say in front of them. This is so important because it's so normalized in our culture to be dishonorable. And what I mean by this is not some abstract thing. You're dishonorable when you have a sort of commitment to someone and you break that. Like, take relationships. Like, we live in a culture where cheating is completely normalized. That is as dishonorable as you can possibly get. Because those bonds that you have to your significant other, they're the most profound human bond you can probably have as a human. And we live in a society that has normalized things like stepping out of one's marriage or cheating or stuff like that. That is dishonorable. Those are dishonorable activities. Avoid those. Don't participate in those. And there's many other examples. Letting a friend down. If you're supposed to visit your sick grandmother on Sunday, go visit her. I don't care if it's boring. Do the right thing. Go visit her. It's dishonorable if you don't. If you have a sort of commitment, if you have a duty and you don't live up to it, that is dishonorable. That is very dishonorable. Don't take it to the point that some of the Japanese have taken it to historically, where you just, arakiri on the basis of being dishonored, right? You can always change by readjusting your habits and go from being a very dishonorable, despicable person to a good one. But the communist should be someone that's honorable, who lives up to their commitments, their duties, and who in doing so influences their environment to become better. If you have a friend group that is constantly acting dishonorably and letting each other down, one, that group is not going to last very long. A lot of those people just end up alone and lonely for the rest of their life. But if you start acting right, it's going to influence them. They're going to start thinking, yeah, you know what? It feels pretty shitty to be dishonorable. And always think like seppuku. Yeah, I thought it was arakiri, but I guess it's seppuku. Yeah, don't go doing seppuku or arakiri, whatever it is. There's a story that comes from Plato's Republic. It's called the Ring of Gyges, right? And Thrasymachus, or Thrasymachus, however you pronounce it. Thrasymachus is trying to convince Socrates, which is really Plato speaking through Socrates. That's how the dialogues work. Thrasymachus is trying to convince Socrates that the only reason why we behave in a form that's honorable, why we behave correctly, why we behave good or morally, is because we're scared of the punishment that's going to come if we get caught not doing so. And he develops this story of the Ring of Gyges, this individual who finds in the forest a ring, and when they turn the ring, they become invisible. And on the basis of that invisibility, they kill the king and seduce the queen and become kings and become a tyrant that does whatever they want for the rest of their life and just satisfies immediate desires because they're not capable of being held accountable. And that's the sort of mentality this degenerative capitalist system promotes. But what does Socrates say? Socrates says the answer that I think communists should put forth today. When you act dishonorably, even if you don't get caught, you tarnish your soul. You know you acted dishonorably. You have to deal with those consequences of acting dishonorably, of doing wrong. And that affects you, man. Those might not be physical scars, but like Dorian Gray, those scars are there. They're on the soul. And if there's something that you don't want to tarnish, is who you are as a self, your perspective of yourself. And when you're unable to live up to these commitments, when you act dishonorably, there's no way you can still sustain a position of being proud in who it is that you are. And that's what real happiness is rooted in. Real happiness is not rooted in satisfying some ephemeral, cheap pleasure, immediate pleasure. Real happiness, as the Greeks sustained, is eudaimonia. Eudaimonia, it's human flourishing. Real happiness is human flourishing, which comes from acting virtuous. Right before you die, and you have those 10 seconds where you're going up, where you're seeing your whole life flash in front of you. Right in that moment, are you going to be satisfied with the sort of person you were? If anyone's ever had a near-death experience, there's some people that have their lives flash in front of them. And then they're like, you know what, man? I didn't like what I saw. I want to be different. And then they go on and develop the sort of healthy, virtuous habits that allow them to be different. It's the same here, you know? When you act dishonorably, you're creating the sort of conditions so that in your last moments, you're like, you know what, man, I wasted my life. I wasted my life. I could have been better, and I wasted my life. And there's nothing more tragic than that. At the human level, there really is nothing more. There's nothing more tragic than that. So be honorable. That's number 5. Okay. Number 6, don't be afraid to get your hands dirty. In conjunction with number 3, so serve the people, ensure that you have the sort of basic handyman skills, or handy person if we want to be woke, that allow you to serve the people and be the person your community and workplace turns to when something needs fixing. So, in order to serve your community, there are certain basic things like knowing how to hammer in a nail, knowing how to turn on a fire, or knowing how to do basic tasks that help people around the house or something. Those sort of basic tasks that are kind of like life skills. You should have those. I'm not saying everyone has to turn into Noah and be a carpenter and be the fastest nail gun in the Midwest. But those sorts of basic tasks that in previous American generations, your grandfather or father would have taught you as just a basic component of being a man, which now, of course, we can universalize and a basic component of being a good human being in general. Like, you should learn those. There's going to come moments where in order to step up and be the person that helps your community, you need to have some of these skills, and you should have those. It's again kind of given, kind of common sense, but if you're going to try to be a better human being, you should have some of these basic, almost survival like, but not even, it's just basic handyman skills. Okay, so that's number 6. Number 7, look presentable. The Communist Party cadre is supposed to be someone that embodies the most advanced detachment of their class. If you dress poorly, this reflects badly on you, your comrades, and our cause. Dress to command respect. That doesn't mean wearing a suit 24/7. Use common sense. This might be another controversial one, but you should dress respectable if you're in a communist party. That doesn't mean wearing a suit or wearing a tie, which I never wear, hardly ever wear. It means just looking presentable. It's kind of commonsensical. We're not asking you to go on and buy a bunch of suits and dress shirts, but try to look presentable in accordance with the events that you are attending. If you wear a suit and tie to go clean the beach, That's not a good presentable um, uh, outfit. That again, that's part of not being normal. Like, um, dress in a way that's presentable, in a way that from your outfit you can command some sort of respect. If you're wearing stuff with holes that's dirty and all that stuff, it's like, eh, probably not the best, unless you're like coming from work or something. But um, there you go. That's this is what I was looking for. Thank you, the Fine Arts Revolution. Thank you, comrade. Dress like you would if you were going to like realistically ask someone out for like important uh events. If you're going to the gym, don't wear a suit or a button-up shirt. Some of this, guys, some of this should be basic, but trust me, it's not, and it's important for it to be said. Get a cowboy. If you're in Texas, get a cowboy hat. If you're in Texas, definitely you can do cowboy hat. Maybe other parts of the country, you can do cowboy hat. It'll look a little bit weird in like cosmopolitan New York to be with a cowboy hat. I think, I don't know, but dress in a way that's presentable. That should be common sense. And the last one, treat everyone equally. Do not adjust how you treat people because of differences in class or status. Treat the waiter how you would the owner of a restaurant. Try to remember people's names when you meet them. Give them a firm handshake. Look at people in the eye and be a good listener. Treat your interactions with everyone as an end in itself, not a means to something else. They're my hidden Kantian tendencies showed itself there at the end. Kant has something called the categorical imperative, which is a sort of basis for what he calls practical reason, right, or ethics, or morality. And what it says is act as if the maxim of your actions were to become a universal law. So act as if what you're about to do were to be done by everyone else. How would you think the world would fare if everyone acted in the way that you're about to act? So, take an example like littering. If everyone littered, what sort of world would we live in? If everyone cleaned up their communities, what sort of world would we live in? Obviously, the previous example is a worse one. The one that comes after is a better example. You'd live in a better world. On the basis of that categorical imperative, one of the next maxims is that you should treat people as ends in themselves, not as means. No one likes being treated as a means. So being treated as if you're being used for something else. Don't ever treat anyone like that. Value the interactions that you have with other people as ends in themselves. Value the interaction itself. Even if it's also a component of getting to somewhere else, don't let it be just a means. Value those interactions in themselves. And don't just use people for alternative purposes. This should be very common sense, but we live in a society where the way people interact with each other is by kind of using each other, either for pleasure or getting up on the ladder or whatever the case might be. Don't do that if you're a communist. Don't act like that. Respect people's basic humanity when you engage with them. Again, Exodus, yeah, just be normal. But again, there's should be common sense, but there's a whole lot of normalization of things that are not normal in our society. When I was in Venezuela, like, I got to see a bunch of leaders from different countries, and it was telling how many people, some people from the US, I'm not going to name names, but how different they treated people. When they were speaking to leaders of other communist movements, very kind, very respectful, listening. And then when they spoke to waiters or when they spoke to the attaches or people that were helping, disrespectful. They're just, they don't even recognize their existence. As soon as I saw people acting like that, that told me something of their character. That told me something of their character. They're not good people. I made it a concerted effort that everyone that I spoke to, I tried to remember their name I try to give them all a firm handshake, look them in the eyes, have some form of conversation that is valuable, meaningful, listen to them, irrespective of whether it was a leader of some communist party, a leader of the Venezuelan government, or one of the waiters in the hotel, or the attaches. Treat everyone equally. It's good because that's how human beings should be, but it's also good, and this is not why you should do it, but it's also good from the standpoint of I am now going to think lesser of those people that I saw consistently not do that. And as you should, if you see individuals that act in a way that treat people differently, you should think less of them. Because that's fucked up. You should treat every human being, excuse my French, you should treat every human being with the same level of dignity and respect. It's just basic to being a good human being. So those are the 8 tips to becoming a good communist. I think that if you apply these to your regular life, especially I'm talking to you ACP members, if you apply this to your regular life, if you consistently think about this, you will become a better communist. You will be able to serve the party better. You will make the party that you're a part of a better party. And you're going to overall be a better human being, and trust that at the end of it, you're going to be happier with yourself. Don't do it just to be happier with yourself. But you are going to receive more happiness being a better person than being a worse one. And that's a basic philosophical insight that the Greeks have handed down to us, and that I fully accept. Okay. I was going to talk about my article of Dialectics of Unity in the Left, but I'll try to do another stream later this week with either Professor Danny Shaw or Eddie or both of them. It's been a minute since we've done a stream where a few of us are on, maybe Noah as well. So I'd like to do one of those. It's mainly been me speaking to you all. My last 4 English broadcasts. But yeah, we'll do another one soon with the whole gang. And then I'll talk about the article there, and then we can bounce ideas back and forth as we used to. But thank you so much for all of you that watched. Thank you for those of you that were able to donate. Thank you, Eva, for becoming a member. Thank you, Poppers, for gifting a membership. Thank you, Luigi, and thank you, Slava, for the $15 altogether. Luigi 5, Slava 10. Thank you so much, comrades. It's a People's Funded Institute, so these donations are definitely appreciated. And for those that are interested, I want to remind you all that I am still accepting students for my History of Western Philosophy class. It's the equivalent of $5 a week, so very, very affordable. $40 in total. If you have some problem with paying the whole thing up front, email us at midwesternmarx@gmail.com. But trust me, you're not going to want to miss this. This is going to give you that first point that we had on the 8 point list, which is the capacity to learn about the history of the most important ideas that have shaped the culture and ideology of the West in which we live in. So, all right. Well, thank you all for tuning in, and we'll sign out as we always do with our new and improved Americanized rendition of the International. We'll see you all next time. Take care.
Stand up, all victims of oppression, for the tyrants fear your might. Don't cling so hard to your possessions, for you have nothing if you have no right. Let racist ignorance be ended, for respect makes the empires fall. Freedom is merely privilege extended, unless enjoyed by one and all. So come, brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The International unites the this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. Let no one build walls to divide us, walls of hatred nor walls of stone. Come greet the dawn and stand beside us. We'll live together or we'll die alone. In our world poisoned by exploitation, those who have taken now they must give. And end the vanity of nations. We've but one earth on which to live. So come brothers and sisters, for the struggle carries on. The international unites the world in the song. So comrades, come rally, for this is the time and place. The international ideal unites the human race. And so begins the final drama in the streets and in the fields. We stand unbowed before their armor, we defy their guns and shields.